Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vaji Ram and Ravi, dated 27th September 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and The Indian Express newspapers, which are very relevant for your examination. In the initial two articles, we have included two mains practice questions which will be highly useful for your upcoming mains examination. So in our first topic, we will look at the status of India's pharma sector, its global role, key challenges as well as the recent developments. Then in our second topic, we will look at various dimensions of AFSPA Act 1958, its purpose, controversies as well as calls for reform. Then in our simplified section, we'll take up 5 articles and we'll try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be very crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. So let's start with the first topic, that is India's pharma sector. The context of this topic is that US President Donald Trump, as usual on his social media platform Truth Social, announced that there will be a 100% tariff that will be applicable on imported, branded and patented pharmaceutical drugs, and this will not be applicable on the companies who already had the manufacturing facilities in the US market. And interestingly, it will not be applicable on the generic medicines, of which India is one of the biggest supplier. And India is helping in meeting around 20% of overall global generic medicines demand. India also accounts for nearly 6% of total US pharma imports, and majorly they are dominated by the generic medicines. What is the difference between the patented and the generic medicines? So the patented medicine, for example, Nexavar is a medicine that is produced by a company with the name Bayer. And similarly, a company with the name Natco Pharma also produces a medicine with the name of sorafenib. Now both these medicines have same therapeutic effect, both of them are having same salt and they are used to treat cancer. But this patented medicine is much costlier because this company has already spended a lot of amount for research and development of that medicine, and that is the reason they want to recover that cost, and that is the reason they apply for a patent, and generally that patent is given for around 20 years. After the expiry of that 20 years period, there can be a license that can be given to produce the generic medicines, or in other case a compulsory license can be issued to any of the companies to ensure that that medicine or that essential drug is available in the market at the affordable cost. And that compulsory license is generally issued without the consent of that company who already got the patent of that drug. For example, the monthly cost of this Nexavar drug is around 2.8 lakh rupees. However, that Natco Pharma, with the help of sorafenib is making this drug available in the market at a cost of 8,800 rupees per month itself. And cancer being one of the disease which has seen uptrend in last few years, not only in the overall global countries but also in the Indian market, and the consistent supply availability at an affordable cost becomes very imminent to treat that drug. And that is the reason generic medicines is one of the important component of survival and the treatment of the patients. Now this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 2 health, as well as government policies and interventions, and you can also relate it with GS paper 3 trade, growth and development. To some extent you can also relate it with biotechnology part. Now let's try to understand the status of India's pharmaceutical industry. So India's pharma industry is world's third largest by volume, but it is 14th by value. What that means, that India is supplying lot of medicines to overall global market, but that is not very high cost medicine, rather it is generic medicines which is affordable, which is low cost. And still India is not in the market like medical devices etc., which are very costly, which can give us a lot of value from the global market. Also, for example, in financial year 23-24, the turnover was around 4,17,345 crore, as well as the 5-year average growth rate of the pharma sector is around 10.08%. All this data is sourced from PIB. Also, India is largest supplier of generic drugs, accounting for 20% of overall global supply. And this supply is not only limited in the low income countries like African countries, but the countries in North America, be it US or other countries, they are also one of the biggest importers of the India's generic medicines, because this helps in treating the people. This helps in ensuring that the medicines, the essential medicines which are very important for survival, they are available at an affordable cost. Also, India manufactures around 60,000 generic brands, and they are across 60 therapeutic categories. India is also biggest supplier of low cost vaccines in the world, be it the Covishield or Covaxin for the treatment of COVID-19, or be it the new vaccines like M21 Matrix vaccine, which is manufactured by Serum Institute of India, and that is used for the treatment of malaria. Also, if you look into some other data which is sourced from India Brand Equity Foundation as well as Department of Pharmaceutical, that says that Indian pharma typically exports around 55% of overall total production. That means that 45% of overall total production is being consumed in the domestic market itself. Why? Because India has a huge population, and with the rising burden of communicable and the non-communicable diseases, it becomes very imminent to ensure that we have consistent availability of the medicines. For example, as per WHO NCD profile of 2018, in India, out of total deaths, 63% are caused by non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, or the diabetes, etc. Similarly, WHO says that out of leading 10 causes of deaths in the globe, in the overall world, 7 are related to non-communicable diseases itself. And slowly and gradually, with climate change happening, with rising population, the burden of diseases are further increasing. That also brings us to the point that there is need for consistent availability of these medicines. Also, this is the overview of Indian market, that 45% as said is the domestic market and 55% is the export market as of data of 2022. Key players in domestic market are about Sun Pharma, Cipla. However, there are less players in the export market because of stringent quality that needs to be maintained for the exporting of the products. Also, if you look into innovators versus generics categories, be it in the domestic market or be it in the exporter market, majority of the companies are in the manufacturing of the generic medicines. That shows that they are not investing in the research and development. They are not helping in solving some new age problem, bringing us a medicine that can actually help us in providing affordable solution to some new kind of diseases or the older diseases whose treatment is very costly. Also, if you look into other challenges that are faced by the pharma industries, the most important factor is the quality concerns, the safety concerns that brings us global mistrust, that brings us a bad image in the global market. For example, few months back, there were deaths related to the cough syrup which are exported from India in Gambia, which is an African country. Few months back, there were certain people who were convicted by one of the Uzbekistan court on account of deaths related to the Indian pharma exports. So whenever these kind of incidents are coming in light, that brings us a bad image, and that also reduces the competitiveness of our product in the global market. Also, the regulatory hurdles that leads to high compliance cost. For example, on account of these medicines being very important for human health, as well as even a small tweak in the production process can have wide ramifications on human health. That is the reason there are stringent regulations that these companies are subjected to, be it the central government regulation or the state government regulations. Also, whenever the regulations are stringent, that adds to the cost of the production, that adds to the cost of medicines. Along with that, with evolving good manufacturing practices norms which are demanded by the global market, that also adds to the cost of the production. For example, the employee training procedures that are needed, the well documented procedures or changes in the process to be evaluated as well as controlled as well as documented properly. So when these kind of norms these companies will be subjected to, that will add to the cost of the production, that will add to the cost of the drug, and that might reduce the competitiveness of these products, these companies. Also, the API dependence. API are the active pharmaceutical ingredients. For example, you people would be using, or majority of Indian population use crocin or this Dolo 650, or they use Calpol, in which the paracetamol is there, which helps in relieving the pain, be it the headache or be it the body ache, that is not useful in one of the pain to which majority of youth population is suffering from, that is pain of heart. So that Calpol or the paracetamol is not useful for that pain of heart. So these active pharmaceutical ingredients which brings or which provides the therapeutic effect in that drug. So these APIs are not manufactured majorly in India, and we are highly dependent on the imports of this, and 70% of these APIs are imported, and especially from China, and majorly that is coming from Hubei province of China itself. And when the zero COVID policy came of this China, where the stringent lockdown norms came, and which also to some extent led to restrictions on the supply of raw materials like APIs, on which Indian pharmaceutical industries were highly dependent. So that to some extent slowed down the production process, and to address that, India launched the production linked incentive scheme, for which the 14 sectors were covered, and one of the sector was pharma sector. Also, the bulk drug park scheme was announced, for which the bulk drug parks were established. One was in Bhatinda, Punjab, one was in Lalitpur in Uttar Pradesh. Now these bulk drug parks has common facilities like solvent recovery facilities, which was helping in reducing the cost of production. So this high dependence on APIs and low manufacturing capabilities in Indian market is again one of the major challenges which is facing the pharmaceutical sector. Along with that, the key starting material, which is one of the important raw material for the production process of the drugs, that is again not manufactured in the Indian markets, and again for this we are dependent on the foreign market to a larger extent. For example, for aspirin, which is again an analgesic used for the treatment of the pains, salicylic acid is one of the raw material or the key starting material which is used for production of aspirin, for which again we are dependent on the imports. Also the pricing pressures. For example, there is national list of essential medicines that is maintained by the central government as well as the state or the UT government. Now as of now this national list of essential medicines 2022, there are 384 drugs which are kept under this, where government maintains a price, a cap on the price above which the particular drug cannot be sold. Why? Because these drugs are very important for the survival of the people, for treatment of the people, and that ensures affordable as well as top quality healthcare for all. Now whenever there is a price cap, that means these companies will not be motivated to further research and develop on that particular drug, or to improve the technology that they were using to reduce the price. Rather, this demotivates these companies. Also, this reduces the innovation incentives for these companies, because tomorrow if they will be innovating, that will add to the cost, but already there is a cap above which they cannot charge, so there is no motivation for them to innovate on the products. Similarly, the global competition from China, US, European Union, also with the support from the various companies that went for China plus one strategy, where they were shifting their investment from China to some other countries, especially after the COVID-19 restrictions they saw. So majority of these benefits were taken by ASEAN countries like Vietnam and Indonesia, where with the more production, with the more investment that is going, the production process is seeing an uptrend, and that is bringing the competition to the Indian pharmaceutical sector. The skill shortage, we do have limited expertise in the biotechnologies as well as the biosimilars, which are the products that are similar to a larger extent to the reference product on account of the effect that it will create on the humans for the treatment of the diseases. Also with regard to the drug discovery, again for example with regard to the mRNA vaccine, with regard to the medical devices production, Indian pharmaceutical sector is much behind as per the global peers, and one of the major reasons for is the limited expertise, limited skill sets that are available with the Indian labor market. Also the innovation gap, that is over reliance on the generics, weak global competitiveness, as well as this lack of support from the private sector for the research and development, as well as for example 0.6 to 0.7% is the only expenditure that is being done on the overall research and development. Now when we see that only a abysmal amount or very small amount is being spent on the research and development, pharmaceutical sector will be getting much lesser amount of that overall spending that is being done on research and development. Along with that, the private sector participation is again less, 60 to 70% is from the public sector itself. Also, if you look into this data of rising dependence which we were talking, that Indian imports of raw material has consistent been an uptrend. If that has seen an uptrend, that be it from the world market or be it from the China market, we are highly dependent on the raw material, be it the APIs or the key starting materials. We are highly dependent on the China as well as other global peers. Now, to address all these issues, government went with several initiatives. They took certain initiatives. For example, production linked incentive and 14 sectors which were kept under the PLI. One of the sector was pharmaceutical sector, and the benefits or the incentives were given to the companies based on the incremental sales of the company. And all the incentives that were provided, they has helped in improving the technologies that these companies were using, because to improve the sales of the company, they also needs to provide the product at a competitive price. And when they will be shifting to better technologies, where they will be bringing better skill sets, obviously that will reduce the cost of production and the sales of the companies will increase, and that will also help in getting incentives from the government. And initially it was launched with an outlay of around 1.97 lakh crore for 5 years. Also, it has helped in creation of more than 1.3 lakh jobs by August 2024. Then similarly, bulk drug parks were established, under which the common facilities were created, as well as regular capacity building and training were provided to the players in the pharmaceutical sectors. For example, solvent recovery facilities were provided. These actually helped in ensuring that the companies who need to invest in these facilities, that investment need or the cost is reduced, because there are common facilities, center of excellence already available in these bulk drug parks, and that can be utilized by these companies. That can reduce the cost of production, and that can make these products more competitive at the global market. Similarly, the Jan Aushadhi Kendra were launched by the central government, under which there were around 2047 generic medicines and surgical items which were made available to ensure that these eminent drugs are available at affordable cost. Also, the medicines were priced 50 to 90% lower than the market price to poor and the needy people, and this has helped in people saving around 38,000 crore on the medicines, and that has also significantly helped in reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure of these poor people, and that has helped in also not perishing them into the poverty, and especially after the COVID-19, which has significantly impacted a majority of the population of India. What is the path ahead or the way forward? First of all, we need to explore and invest in the high value drug market. Focus should be on research and development in gene therapies that can help in treating the abnormalities or the disorders related to genes, or development of mRNA vaccines. mRNA is a type of genetic material that is used in next generation medicine. That was also one of the medicine that was developed for the COVID-19, and they instruct cell to make disease fighting proteins. So these are again a new kind of drugs of which majority of the global market is looking up to India itself. Also, the personalized medicines, that personalized plans, customized treatment plans based on the person's genetic makeup or the disease profile, or the next generation vaccines, for example, advanced vaccines using new platforms like mRNA with faster development and higher effectiveness. If we are focusing on these areas, that can help in further growth of the pharma sector, that can also help in getting more potential in our exports. Also, the medical tourism is one of the industries where India has already taken a lot of efforts, where India has huge potential. And if we are focusing on these high value markets, we can further improve the medical tourism in India. Also, the domestic API manufacturing, that is active pharmaceutical ingredients manufacturing, this can be incorporated in PLI 2.0, or that can be one of the components where government can focus on plug and play model, where government can already build certain facilities and which can provide the proper support for the manufacturing of these APIs. Also the fermentation based APIs, where the microorganisms are actually used, and like antibiotics, hormones are used for the manufacturing of the APIs, which are less costlier. So government again need to provide support to these companies for research and development to develop these fermentation based APIs, because that significantly reduces the cost of APIs, which will also help in reducing the cost of medicines. Also the green chemistry, that is eco-friendly chemical processes that is aimed at reducing pollution and hazardous waste during the drug production. That will also help in reducing the carbon footprint, and this will also help in reducing the external non-tariff barriers which the certain industries are subjected to. For example, cement industry or steel industry is subjected to comprehensive border adjustment tariffs by the European Union. So if the Indian production will shift to the greener alternatives, that will also help in making our products more competitive, as well as it will also help in achieving our target like net zero by 2070. Also the research and development enhancement, tax incentives can be given, grants can be given, as well as more support can come from the private sector with PPP model. For example, there can be certain provisions or amendments in Companies Act that a certain portion of CSR fundings can be spent or needs to be spent on research and development. AI, big data can be used, because with artificial intelligence the production process can be made much more efficient. That can also help in reducing the cost of production. Also the big data analytics can actually help in getting a better oversight, getting a better data about the production process, about the need that is arising in the global market that India can cater. The telemedicine facilities, for example, Manas facility or the Telemanas facilities, similar facilities can be made much more robust, as well as this can be further marketed into the global markets. That is also one of the area where we can leverage. Then the innovation boost that needs to be done across these sectors, that can actually help in building such products which can give us better value. Also the regulatory and the quality compliance, faster approvals for biosimilars or the innovative drugs with dedicated body with better interministerial coordination. Also the stronger pharmacovigilance, that there should be dedicated body. For example, there are food inspectors or there are drug inspectors in different states, but again there are a lot of corruptions involved. Again there is improper oversight mechanism that doesn't help in improving the quality or maintaining the quality. And whenever there will be certain complications that will be arising out of products that we have exported, that will again bring a mistrust or a negative image from the global market. And with addressing that, we can also improve the trust. Also the global market expansion. For example, we can target the African, Latin American or ASEAN countries with certain trade agreements that we can sign from these countries, that can help us in expanding our market and realizing the full potential of our pharma sector. Also the trade deals that we have discussed, the free trade agreement or the comprehensive economic partnership agreements, etc. Also we need to oversee the manufacturing. For example, as of now, the National Manufacturing Mission, which was launched in Budget 2025, that is focusing on clean tech manufacturing. But for that, again, we need a proper plan as well as proper support from the government that can help in transitioning to these clean technologies to these greener technologies. And for that, again, government support becomes imminent. Also, that will help in bypassing certain non-tariff barriers which our products are subjected to because of the quality concerns, because of the sanitary and the phytosanitary concerns. If we will focus on these, it will help in actually realizing this vision of doubling the pharma market to $120 billion by 2030. That was said by one of the report by OPPI and BCG. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards next topic, that is Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958. The context of this topic is that Ministry of Home Affairs with a notification extends the AFSPA in parts of Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland for another 6 months. And this particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 3, linkages between development and spread of extremism, role of external state and non-state actors in creating challenges to internal security. So this AFSPA Act 1958 is a law that provides sweeping power to the armed forces in the areas which are labeled as disturbed, and it strengthens the ability of military or the paramilitary forces to deal with the situation that has arisen with regard to the public order, and also it provides powers to battle the insurgency and especially the insurgent movements that were witnessed in the northeastern parts of India. And it is currently in force in Nagaland, Assam, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, as well as it was extended to Jammu and Kashmir under a separate act of 1990. It was withdrawn from Tripura in year 2015, from Mizoram in 1980s itself, and from Meghalaya in year 2018. And this is a map that you can remember that these are the states where the AFSPA is applicable in the selected areas, and this you can make in your mains answers also. Now, what is the historical background of this AFSPA Act? So on 15th August 1942, an ordinance was promulgated by Viceroy Lord Linlithgow to deal with the Quit India movement, to suppress the Quit India movement. So this is the first time that such kind of ordinance came in India. After that, around 1954, there has been increase in the insurgent movement, especially in the Nagaland. To deal with that, Armed Forces Special Powers Assam and Manipur Act 1958 was passed by the parliament, and it was mainly to deal with the Naga insurgency. And then in 1964, United Nation Liberation Front, which was again an insurgent group, was formed. Along with that, certain other insurgent group were formed. To deal with that, AFSPA was extended to Manipur also. And then after, in Tripura, it was extended to deal with the tribal Bengali conflict that was witnessed, and after that from Tripura it was withdrawn subsequently. Then in 90s, 80s, to deal with the Khalistani movement, the Armed Forces Punjab and Chandigarh Special Powers Act of 1983 was passed, as well as it was withdrawn subsequently in year 1997. And with a separate act of the parliament, this AFSPA was also extended in Jammu and Kashmir to deal with the rising cases of militancy, the killing of the armed forces, as well as the local population. Now, what is a disturbed area? So as per section 3 of Armed Forces Special Powers Act, a notification can be issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs declaring that an area is disturbed, and the purpose is to provide more powers, more civil powers to the armed forces. Now, what are the powers, special powers that are given under the AFSPA? So this allows any commissioned officer, warrant officer, and non-commissioned officers or any other persons of equivalent rank to fire upon or use force against any person acting in contravention of any law for the time being in force in the disturbed area, arrest suspicious people without warrant, destroy any structure suspected to the house and arms dump, shelter from which armed attacks are made or likely to be made, conduct searches without warrants for evidence to recover wrongfully confined person or property or arms or explosives, and AFSPA bars prosecution or proceedings except with center's note against personnel for action committed while exercising powers under the Act. What happens? Let's suppose any police officer wants to search your office or your home. He needs a warrant from the magistrate itself, without which he cannot search or seize certain items from your home. But under AFSPA, there is no requirements of such warrant. And time and again, it has been criticized for use of excessive force, for use of these kind of misuse of these kind of powers. But whenever these kind of powers are extended, this aids in the armed forces proper dealing with the issue of the public order that has arisen, or the rise in the insurgency or the militancy or the violence that they were witnessing. With the 1972 amendment that was done in the Act, now who can declare an area as a disturbed? It can either the center government or the state governments. They can declare any of the area as disturbed. And who are the authorities who can declare? It is either the central government or the governor of the state or the administrator of any of the union territory who can declare any of the area as disturbed, and then they can recommend the implementation of the AFSPA. Now, what are the reasons on account of which this AFSPA can be imposed? It can be related to any of the reasons of the communal violence or religious reasons, or the racial violence, that is, for example, ethnic violence that is witnessed in Manipur, the Kuki Mithi violence, or it is the linguistic or the language related issues, language related protest or the law and order situation, regional, caste or the community disputes. All these can be some of the reasons on account of which an area can be categorized as disturbed, and APSPA can be extended to those areas also. Also, the duration of that can be should be minimum 3 months as per Disturbed Areas Act 1976, because this is the minimum area within which the armed forces will be able to deal with that situation. Also, what is the role of state? They can recommend the applicability of the act. They can also recommend the area on which that act should be implemented. As of now, with the Union Home Ministry's notification, the coverage is in some of the states like Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. Time and again, there are questions that are raised that is there a need of APSPA or not? So, arguments in support of APSPA says that it provides powers to tackle with the insurgency, militancy or the terrorism. It provides that operational flexibility within which or under which the operations become successful in a time-bound manner. As per Ministry of Home Affairs, in last decade, there has been 80% reduction in insurgency-related incidents in the northeastern states. Also, it provides rapid response capabilities, the immediate action that is required. It permits quick action without the need of warrant or the bureaucratic clearances, which are vital during the major operations, especially in Kashmir valleys, where if there is a report or there is an intelligence that certain militants or terrorists are hiding in certain areas. For example, Operation Mahadev, which was launched to eliminate the Pahalgam attackers, was aided by the APSPA, which allowed the greater operational flexibilities to the armed forces. Similarly, the legal protection, that it provides immunity to the armed forces and they are shielded from the litigations. For example, if there is a person who is, or if there is a police officer who came to your home for search and seizure operation without any warrant, he might be subjected to judicial scrutiny. But that also takes some time to get the warrant, and the time that is wasted in getting the warrants or the clearances, etc., that might jeopardize that operation. Also, if there was certain act that was done in good faith, and despite that, that armed personnel is subjected to the judicial oversight or litigations, that demotivates the forces. So this immunity that is provided to the armed forces for the works that they are doing in good faith to maintain the public order, that improves the motivation of the police forces or the armed forces. Also, the strategic stability, that it helps in maintaining the security. It also supports the development and the democratic processes. For example, recently the rail link were announced in the northeastern states, or the Vande Bharat train that was announced in Jammu and Kashmir. That all that is possible. One of the reason is the APSPA, because that provides more oversight mechanism, intelligence sharing, as well as support to the armed forces. And that is also witnessed from this data that shows that in Jammu and Kashmir, the terror related incident consistently declined from 2018 to 2021, and that is only one of the major reason can be because of this APSPA. Similarly, northeast also, the law and order situations or the incident related to insurgency has consistently declined from 2014 to 2021 because of the support that armed forces gets from the APSPA Act. Also, it helps in de-radicalizing the people. The peace accords that were signed between the various insurgent groups as well as the government of India, as well as it also helped in military efforts in reducing the extremism. And most of extremist groups has laid down their arms. Also, they become partners in the peace and the negotiation process as well as development of Northeast state. Since 2014, there are more than 7,000 insurgents who have surrendered. And it is one of the reasons can be because of the APSPA, because of the powers that armed forces gets against these people. However, this APSPA is criticized because of certain acts that has been done in past. So what are arguments against the APSPA Act? The human rights violation. So act has been often linked with grave human rights violation, extrajudicial killings, the allegations of torture by the security forces, as well as difficulty in distinguishing between the peaceful protest as well as an act of unruly mob. For example, Iram Sarmila, who is an human rights activist, started a hunger strike in year 2000 on account of allegations of Melam massacre that killed around 10 civilians in Manipur. Similarly, the violation of civil liberties, under which Article 19 and 21 provides for freedom of speech and expression, freedom of peaceful protest, as well as freedom of movement within India. Similarly, Article 21, which provides right to life and liberty. Under Article 22, which provides the fundamental rights to be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours itself. Most of these rights are violated under the APSPA as per the critics of the APSPA. Similarly, the alleged crimes. That act has received criticism due to the various alleged crimes that range from crimes against women to exploitation of locals for personal gain due to the unprecedented powers that are given to the security forces under the act. For example, Thangsam Manorama, who was a Manipur girl, she faced custodial torture and sexual assault before being allegedly killed by the security forces in year 2004. These are the allegations by the local people. Then the psychological impact, that the fear, trauma, mental health issues that these people faces whenever they are in the custody. And for example, APSPA has been applicable in Jammu and Kashmir since 1990 and still that is in force, and that also alienates people from the mainstream, from the other civilian population, from the government itself. Also, the alienation, the resentment, mistrust, increased disconnect between locals and the government, where it becomes difficult to provide proper governance, where the cases like over the ground workers, where the local population are also supporting the militancy in the valley, because of the alienation that they have time and again felt since the continuation of the APSPA Act, where there are several restrictions on the civil liberties. Also, the violation of the state autonomy, that is, the police is one of the subject that is under the state list or under the 7th schedule of the constitution. So the power of central government to declare any area as disturbed under the APSPA Act versus the powers under the state list that are given to the state government. So this again creates a difficulty to that which should be given more weight. It is the state powers of police or the powers of the central government to maintain the public order by declaring that area as the disturbed area. What is the way forward? What are the directives that are given by the Supreme Court? So under Inderjeet Barua versus State of Assam 1983 case, the Supreme Court said that the governor's power to declare any area as disturbed is not arbitrary. That is under the judicial review. Supreme Court can see the matter or the material based on which that area was declared as disturbed. Also, it must follow the legislative guidelines for declaring disturbed areas. Then the People's Union for Human Rights versus Union of India case of 1998, it again said that the periodic review of disturbed area status should be done every 3 months, and if there is a improvement in the public order, that APSPA should be removed from that area. Also, in H. Gogoi versus Union of India 1988 case, the Supreme Court said that armed forces must act with the district administration. They must act in the coordination with the district magistrate as well as the superintendent of police itself, because they are well equipped to understand the local topography. They are also well equipped to understand the local situation in a better manner. Also to communicate with the local people, with the local officers that are recruited, they are in a better position. Also, they cannot function as an independent authority with no coordination at all with the district administration. Then in Resang Casing 1983 case, the Supreme Court said that arrested person to be handed over to the nearest officers. They should not be in the armed forces custody. Also, this must be done with the least possible delay. Then there are certain committees who recommended, for example, Jeevan Reddy Committee of 2004, they said to repeal the APSPA. Also, they said that we can insert provisions in the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967, and we can amend the UAPA. We can also define powers of the armed forces so that the allegations of extrajudicial killings, sweeping powers that are given to them, they are also subjected to certain restrictions. Also, we can set up grievance cells in each districts and with deployment of certain officers to deal with the complaints of allegations of the crimes that are being taken
taken by the armed forces. Then the second Administrative Reforms Commission, second ARC, which was chaired by Virappa Moily. The fifth report was on public order, and they also recommended repeal of APSPA, but it is not implemented as of now. Then the Santosh Hegde Commission, who said that there should be review of APSPA every 6 months, and this is applicable now. Also, the UAPA can be amended to tackle the terrorism, and UAPA was also amended in year 2019, under which now individuals can be also designated as terrorists apart from the organizations. Also, no blanket immunity for armed forces, accountability for any of the excesses that will be done by the armed forces. Also, there can be alignment with Article 22, that army should comply with Article 22 of the Indian Constitution, which mandates presenting the arrested person before the magistrate within the 24 hours itself. Also, the amendment in the disturbed area can be done. A clear evidence-based methodology should be developed in consultation with the state to define or to declare any area as a disturbed area, to deal with any kind of allegations that are these acts are subjected to. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. In our simplified section, first topic is India needs a plan. This particular topic is related to your GS paper 3, trade, growth and development, and this has appeared in today's the Indian Express page number 10. So what is the news, what is the context? Before looking into that, let's first try to understand what exactly is the World Trade Organization or WTO. So initially there was this general agreements on tariff and trade that came in 1947, which was the temporary framework for international trade rules, that what is the rules that should be followed to increase the trade in the global world. Then under this GATT there was no institutional structure, and that led to birth of World Trade Organization with a proper institutional framework, with proper mechanism to deal with the disputes among the countries, and also to provide certain framework that can be followed by the countries to improve the trade between the overall global world. Also, it provides for the ministerial conference, which is the top decision making body, and they meets biennially, every 2 years they meet. Also, there is this General Council of the WTO, which is the authority to act on the behalf of the ministerial conference. There are certain other important institutions under the WTO, for example, dispute settlement body, which helps in finalizing or taking decisions on the disputes between the countries or the group of countries, between developed or developing countries. And as of now, it is battling with the absence of the members, and that is the reason it is not functioning properly. To deal with the decisions of the dispute settlement body, there is an appellate body that provides appeals with regard to the decisions that are taken by the dispute settlement body. As of now, there are 164 states and the custom territories that are part of WTO, and it oversees around 90% of world trade. It provides also for the package of agreements which set international rules in the field of trade. For example, there is agreement on agriculture. For example, there are different subsidies which are kept under different box, amber box, green box, etc. Amber box subsidies are trade distorting, which directly impacts the prices of the product in the global market. Now, another thing that you need to understand, that developed country and the developing countries are given different treatment under the WTO rules and the obligations. The special and the differential treatment that developing countries get. For example, for GNI, gross national income per capita of $13,206 or more will be categorized as high income countries. So based on the incomes, we can categorize developed and developing countries, and developing countries actually gets much better treatment. They get more time to comply with the rules, norms or the obligations of the World Trade Organization. Also, it is a platform for multilateral negotiations aimed at development of international trade rules, as well as reductions of the trade barriers, be it the tariff barriers or the non-tariff barriers, to improve the trade between the countries. Also, it is source of information that ensures transparency in the application of trade policy measures by all the members. Now, what is the current context? In a move that has implications for the overall global trade, the China has announced during a UN General Assembly event that it will no longer seek the special and differentiated treatment in the future WTO negotiations. What was the current context? What was happening as of now? Since China also categorized themselves as a developing countries, they were also getting certain special and the differentiated treatment, and that is the reason they also get leverage, they also get extra time to comply with agreement on agriculture or various other subsidies that they were providing to their agriculture, or they were not opening the e-commerce, etc. Now, this concession, while preserving the China's self-declared developing country status and all existing perks such as lenient subsidy caps and phased implementation of agreement, is a tactical retreat amid the escalating US tariff pressures and long-standing US objection in the practice. For example, countries like US, which is a developed country, were consistently demanding for more liberalization in the case of e-commerce, so that the big giants like Amazon, etc., or Walmart, etc., can access the markets of the developing countries. But as of now, developing countries are apprehensive with regard to the e-commerce rule, because the e-commerce in the developing countries are at nascent stage, and developing countries are of view that if these companies will be allowed, these foreign companies, developed countries companies will be allowed, that might jeopardize the future of the local companies, and that is the reason we do not have a final settlement still for the e-commerce. Also, the WTO is lauded as a breakthrough from reform. Skeptics see it as a symbolic window dressing, allowing China to deflect criticism without dismantling its agricultural and industrial advantages that it was getting. Also, for India, this development is harbinger of intensified scrutiny. For example, President Donald Trump has announced a fresh salvo of 100% tariff on branded and patented pharma products. Also, and announced broader tariff on furniture, kitchen and cabinet and trucks. As one of the biggest economies in the world, there are already demands for India to shed its developing nation armor. And with China taking a lead, further pressure will be mounted on India to shed its developing country status. Also, with ascent classes with India is reliant on special and differentiated treatment, which is a cornerstone since 1995 WTO accession, rooted in the general agreements of tariff and trade legacy. It provides flexibility with high tariff, extended compliance period, essential for shielding vulnerable population in a nation where the per capita income ranks 136 globally. What does that mean? That since, let's suppose, in the dairy sector, there are around 5 crore, more than 5 crore population which are directly dependent. Around 50% population workforce is dependent on the agriculture. If you talk about the specific number, 46.1% is the employment generation by the agriculture. Now, if the subsidized product or the cheap product from the developed countries will flood Indian markets, these people who are dependent on the allied sector or the agriculture sector, their future might be jeopardized. And that is the reason India imposes high tariffs on the US product or the developed countries product to save our product, to provide immunity to our Indian industries, our Indian domestic population, domestic industries which are still at the nascent stage. But that is again not subject to criticism. Why? Because we have the special and differentiated treatment out of our developing country status that we have got from the WTO. And at the heart of debate lies the agriculture, employing around half of India's workforce, underpinning of food security of 1.4 billion population. Under the WTO agreement on agriculture, subsidies are boxed, that is trade distorting amber box, that is capped at 10% of production value for developing countries versus 5% for developed countries. Now, for example, the MSP that is provided by the Indian government, that is under the amber box, because directly it is impacting the price of the products. It is not the prices of the food products or the commodities or the crops that are kept under the MSP are not market determined. Rather, government is also giving a threshold that for the floor price, that this is the minimum price below which the market prices will not fall, because government is guaranteeing that this is the MSP price on which we will be buying your product. Now, this is trade distorting because this is directly impacting the prices of the product. But now, why MSP is important? To also fulfill the need of PDS or the public distribution system, which is mandated under the National Food Security Act 2013, under which there are priority households and the Antyodaya Ann Yojana beneficiaries. Antyodaya Ann Yojana beneficiaries get 35 kg ration. Priority household gets 5 kg ration. and it is covering more than 60% of Indian population. Now, why it is important to also fulfill the needs of food security, that is availability, affordability and accessibility of food, also to fulfill the nutritional need, also to achieve the SDGs 1 of no poverty or the zero hunger SDG 2. So India is consistently supporting this because they need to fulfill this idea of food security. But India has been also subject to criticism because the 1986-88 reference period, that is the price that critics argue inflate India's reported agreement measurement of support, that is often exceeding the 10% threshold limit. When the reference period is so older, obviously the figure will be much inflated when we compare it with the 25 figure or 24 figure. Also, developed nation doling out $850 billion in global farm subsidy in 2023. They hypocritically target India's program while protecting their own through green box loopholes for research and environmental aid. They are also supporting, but again they said that amber box, which are directly trade distorting, but they are supporting through research and development, environmental aid, which is kept under the green box. Also, if India faces coerced graduation from developing status, the implications are dire. Phased AMS reduction could slash subsidies by 23% over a decade as per AOA timeline, leading to a 10 to 15% drop in the rural income and heightened food prices volatility. For example, food subsidy is more than 1 lakh crore. Similarly, the fertilizer subsidy is also more than 1 lakh crore. So this helps in reducing the input cost to the farmers, based on which the majority of the population which is dependent on agriculture, they are able to do the farming, they are able to produce the product at a competitive price or at affordable prices. Also, what is the way forward? India should strive to lead the G33 coalition to extend the 2013 Bali ministerial interim peace clause on public stock holding, that is beyond 23. That is, there was a peace clause that was signed that there will be no limit till 2023 for public stock holding. That should be extended beyond 23 until 2030, and the G33 coalition, that is coalition of developing countries, can actually push for this. Also, this can be tied to the demands of the developed countries to eliminate export subsidies as pledged in 2005 at Hong Kong conference. Also, secondly, e-commerce, India should join plurilateral e-commerce talks offering commitments on consumer protection and cross-border data flows with certain restrictions for national security. Also, in exchange for tariff-free access to developed market, it should build a domestic capacity, expand the open network for digital commerce, support the Indian e-commerce platforms. Because if we want to get certain relaxations, we will also have to give certain relaxations. This is always give and take relation. If we want certain leverage in the public stock holding in the agriculture, we will have to open our market for the e-commerce. Also, India should phase out non-essential, special and differentiate treatment in sectors that are non-core and gradually reduce the tariff protections over decade to gain market access across geographies or in areas where Indian export face duties. For example, CBAM of EU, or the sanitary and the phytosanitary measures which Indian products are subjected to. Also, intellectual property, India must maintain compulsory licensing and patent appositions under the TRIPS Article 31, citing public health needs for 1.4 billion people. Also, that was reaffirmed in 2001 Doha Declaration. But also, it should offer phased realignment with stricter IP rules. We should not completely neglect the intellectual right protections. We should understand that the compulsory license is an exceptional criteria which should be slowly phased out with more focus on research and development and more intellectual rights filing. Also, we can focus on more green box style funding for biotech innovation, reducing dependence on generic exports while preserving the access for low income populations. Also, India should propose a tiered STD framework based on per capita GDP or sectoral competitiveness that will allow India to retain agricultural protections, because with per capita GDP we will be at a lower side and we will get more support. Unlike China's state-driven economy, India's democratic constraints limit rapid SDD amendment, because here the state-driven economy is there, or the communist government that is there, they can support any one particular company and they can diminish the support to any other company. They can differentiate between the companies. Why? Because they want consistent growth. They want consistent growth of any one sector or company, which is not possible in a democratic country like India. So India can move forward while protecting vulnerable sectors. Protecting steps and advocacy will position India as a middle power, shaping a WTO that balances growth with equity. And moreover, isn't it better to change before you are compelled to? So it is not necessary to go for the reform when we will be compelled to, whenever certain restrictions will be imposed on us. Rather, we should slowly and gradually improve on our own without any compulsion from the foreign developed countries. Next topic is India-EU strategic agenda. This is again related to your GS paper 2. International treaties and agreements, effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interest. And this has appeared in today's Indian Express, page number 18. With the pressure mounting from United States with regard to the tariffs that were announced, as well as H-1B visa norms that were announced, along with that the recent pharma tariffs that were announced, India is also exploring certain other markets where they can export the products, where the areas which can also give access to the movement of the labor as well as capital. And European Union, as well as you can say Europe, is one of such area where we can position ourselves as one of the future bigger market as the destination market. Now, at a time when the United States under the President Donald Trump is upending old and established global alignment, Europe is positioning itself as an all-weather friend of India, which is an unpredictable alternative to unpredictability that is stemming from the White House or US. India-European Union Leaders Summit, which will build the European Commission's President, a visit to India earlier this year, is set to take place next February, and in the 6 months leading up to, the two sides will be meeting roughly once a week to discuss the cooperations across the different areas, across the various domains. Earlier this month, EU issued a document which outlines a strategic agenda for India-EU ties ahead of the summit that will happen in the month of February. And this is based on the 5 pillars. First is economy and trade. European Union is India's largest trading partner, as well as India is EU's largest trading partner in the global south. And in 2024, the bilateral trade in goods reached to around 120 billion euro, an increase of nearly 90% over the last decade. Trade in services add other 60 billion euro between India and European Union. Around 6,000 European companies operate in India, and they directly employ more than 3 million people and support millions more jobs indirectly. European Union foreign direct investment, or FDI, across different sectors, different companies, around 140 billion euro in 2023, and it also doubling in 5 years, almost doubling in 5 years. Also, but there is more room for relationships to grow. India accounts for less than 2.5% of EU's trade in goods and services. That shows that there is potential, there is room for more exports from India. Indians' investment in EU total only around 10 billion euro. That also shows that there is more scope for investment in European Union. Also, EU says that a free trade agreement substantially reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers will unlock the potential of the trade as well as investment flow between both the countries, where significantly the tariff and the non-tariff barriers will be reduced between both the India and EU. Also, both sides aim to conclude negotiations by the end of 2025 before the summit in February. Then the second important is the global connectivity, that is EU's global gateway mobilized around 3 billion euro globally to support energy, digital and transport infrastructure, while India boasts initiatives such as Mahasagar, that is mutual and holistic advancement for security and growth, and this is in line with the proper use of the maritime resources, be it in the Indo-Pacific. And in 2020-21, the two partners concluded the EU-India connectivity partnership. Leveraging these platforms, both partners are well positioned to cooperate on strengthening connectivity between Europe, India, unlocking new commercial opportunities for Europe and Indian businesses. Also, this India-Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, it is also an strategic collaboration with better market access, with better access to the other markets. And it will also revive the historical Eurasian trade routes by limiting the dependence on the traditional maritime routes like Suez Canal. And this will also help in promoting or more investment in railways, energy and certain other infrastructure. Also, in the framework of IMEC, EU is advancing EU-Africa-India digital corridor, including 11,700 km of Blue Raman submarine cable system connecting Europe to India via the Mediterranean, and that will also help in consistent supply of the internet connection, and that will boost the internet connectivity as well as digital infrastructure. Also, EU and India are collaborating to develop green shipping corridor, which will strengthen the sustainable maritime connectivity. Recently also, Indian government gave a 70,000 crore support to the shipping sector, and that will also be in line with this green shipping corridor manufacturing. In third pillar is the emerging technologies, where EU brings the world-class research and digital infrastructure, a strong industry, robust regulation and expertise in green and digital technologies. India offers a skilled workforce, vast data set, a growing digital economy and electronic sector, especially certain other digital public infrastructure sector like UPI, Aadhaar, etc. are some of the role models that can be applied in other European countries. Also, in expertise in cooperation on critical emerging technologies like AI, Internet of Things, that can be also crucial between both the countries. Also, EU proposes setting up of a number of EU-India innovation hubs, dedicated platforms on key technologies that will also bring together policymakers, industry leaders, startups and further improve the investment as well as trade in the new emerging sectors. Also, EU-India Startup Partnership in collaboration with European Innovation Council, Startup India and member countries, it will focus on strategic AI domains, including large language models, that is LLMs, multilingual natural languages processing data sets, AI training data sets, supercomputers, etc. And both EU and India are working towards a robust measure to prevent unauthorized transfer or misuse of sensitive technologies, ensuring their responsible utilization in support of global stability and democratic values. Also, European Union was one of the first area which came with the special data sets, special data safety norms. Also, the both partners will also promote collaboration on the peaceful use of nuclear energy, covering nuclear reactor safety, radioactive waste management, nuclear security and nuclear fusion. And this is also in line with one of the major announcement done by Honorable Prime Minister from the Red Fort on 15th August that India is going to double its nuclear capacity. Also, the security and the defense cooperation has recently gained momentum through strategic dialogue on foreign and security policy. Also, the regular thematic dialogues are happening on maritime security, cyber security, counter-terrorism, non-proliferation. The two sides are also launching negotiations on security of information agreement that will facilitate the exchange of classified information, stronger cooperation in security matters, and that will also help in dealing with the terrorist as well as cyber security related concerns. EU's increasing strategic engagement in Indo-Pacific, especially its support for the regional partners, is comprehensive security areas. EU will also seek to conclude arrangements between EU Naval Force and the Indian Navy. EU and India are also working towards combating terror financing, the online propaganda and security risk posed by the emerging technologies. Both the countries, both the entities are also leveraging various other platforms like FATF, etc. to deal with the terror financing and other cyber security related concerns. EU-India Defence Industry Forum, which will bring together business from both the sides and identify major opportunities for cooperation. Also, the people-to-people ties. In 2023, around 8,25,000 Indian citizens lived in EU, the largest group receiving the EU Blue Card. These EU Blue Cards are issued to highly educated professionals, and only then they get recruited in the European Union countries. Also, both partners aim to manage the migration sensibly, tackling the illegal flows while supporting the balanced talent mobility. They are also looking towards expanding the exchange of student, academics and researchers to leverage the soft power. And this is the data related to India's import from European Union and India's export to European Union. That consistently India is exporting much higher as compared to import, but also there is significant potential that lies with the trade between India and European Union. Also, the India-EU free trade agreement, what that is, India and both the entities are pushing for a conclusion in 2025. The key development are that India and EU free trade agreement needs to be concluded within 2025, and it is, if finalized, would be largest of its kind globally, covering trade, investment protection and sectoral cooperation. And negotiations were stalled for 8 years and reassumed in 2021. Along with that, there will be security and defense cooperation. For example, India has shown interest in joining EU-led defense project under Permanent Structured Cooperation (PESCO) framework. The Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, which is also envisaged as modern golden road connecting the historical Eurasian trade route. Also, there are talks include sensitive areas such as tariffs, automobile, alcohol, pharmaceutical and textiles, along with the data security as well as visa provisions for better focus on the investment as well as labor movement. Moving towards next topic, that is MiG-21 bows out, road ahead for Indian Air Force dwindling fighter fleet, and this is related to your GS paper 3 defense, and this has appeared in today's The Indian Express page number 15. So the IAF has bid farewell to its iconic MiG-21 fighter jets, and last two squadrons, that were number 23 Panthers and number 3 Cobras, which together operated around 36 jets. They were retired in a decommissioning ceremony that happened in Chandigarh. And retirement further depletes the IAF's fighter squadron strength. And this was a Soviet era fighter aircraft, and it entered service in 1963 as IAF's premier interceptors, fighters used for defensive air-to-air combat to intercept any enemy aircraft. And it was a single engine, single seater fighter from erstwhile Soviet Union. And it proved their mettle in several India's conflict, be it 1965 India-Pakistan War, 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, or 1999 Kargil conflict, or the Operation Safed Sagar, which was launched. India has procured more than 700 MiG-21s of different variants, with most recent was the Bison, and this was one of the MiG-20 Bisons which was downed during the India-Pakistan skirmishes that happened after the Pulwama attack. Also, there were several issues. Most notably was the aircraft's engine, which has been notorious for flaming out without notice, and that was one of the reasons that 500 MiG-21s have crashed in last 60 years, killing at least 170 pilots. Sadly, more than 20 aircrafts have crashed since 2010, and that is the reason, unfortunately, it was called as flying coffin. And most senior IF officers, especially those who have flown the aircraft, say that given the sheer number of flying hours the MiG-20s have seen, their safety record is not as poor as it is made out to be. With the retirement of MiG-21s, IF is now down to fighter squadron at a strength of 29. Less than 70 of the sanctioned strength is 42, and this sanctioned strength has never been met. That means in case of two-front conflict with Pakistan and China, India will woefully short of fighters. Pakistan has an estimated fighter squadron strength of 20 to 25, whereas the figure for China is over 60. And a squadron comprises around 16 to 18 jets. And as of now, in addition, many of the older IF jets, including MiG-29, Jaguars, Mirage 2000, are said to be phased out by 2025. And the current focus of India is on robust air defense, with buying S-400 from Russia, or with the development of Akash Tir air-to-air defense system, or as announced by Honorable Prime Minister on 15th August, to provide air defense to all critical infrastructure by 2025, and mission Kusha is also launched to provide that air defense. Also, IAF has two operational squadrons of indigenous light combat aircraft Tejas Mark 1, and it is said to receive an additional 180 Tejas Mk1 jets from state-owned Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. But there has been consistent delay to provide the Tejas Mk1. Initially it was started in 1980s. Still there has been consistent delay, and that was again one of the things that was highlighted by our air chief in one of the meet or conference that happened, that the slow or the reduced efficiency or the slow delivery of this Tejas Mk1 has also one of the reason why we are facing the reduced strength with regard to the squadron of our aircrafts. Also, HAL is developing Tejas Mk2 jets as well as advanced medium combat aircraft, which is a 5th generational aircraft, and it has stealth fighter capabilities. And this we'll see what is this stealth fighter capabilities that helps in reducing the radar signatures, and it also help in providing greater time or greater maneuverability in the sky, this stealth capabilities. Also, India is going to buy certain other Rafale from the Dassault, which is a French company, Dassault, which is a French company, and few of these jets may come in flyaway condition as earlier and providing an immediate boost to India's fighter strength. Rest will likely be manufactured in India in collaboration with the Indian firms. Also, India planned to upgrade 84 of its Su-30 MKI fighter jet under this Super 30 program. So there may be a question in prelims with regard to Super 30 program. But consistently there has been delay with regard to the LCA, that is Light Combat Aircraft program, that needs to be seen. And that is the reason the AMCA, that is Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, that will not be directly given to HAL. Rather, they will have to compete with certain global companies like Safran of French. Also, delivery of first 2 Tejas Mk1 aircraft is likely to take place in October this time after a 2-year delay. The reason: delayed procurement of F404 engine from US defense major GE Aerospace. Also, HAL plans to produce 16 Tejas fighter next year onwards, providing engine deliveries from US are on schedule. Original plan was complete all delivery by 2030. Even if HAL is able to keep up with manufacturing 16 aircrafts a year, deliveries are now set to run into mid 2030s. Also, why this delay in delivery? Because we are dependent on the engine from US GE company. India started this manufacturing of Kaveri engine that started in 1980s, but still there has been consistent delay and we were not able to achieve that thrust that is required for these fighter jets. Also, there was clearance that was given to this Kaveri engines to be used in the Ghatak drones because they have achieved that much of thrust that they can power the Ghatak drones. Along with that, we also need to understand this generation of the fighter craft. The first generation jet aircrafts used turbojets for propulsion instead of earlier piston-driven aircraft. Second generation aircraft integrated new technology, swept or delta wings, guided missiles beyond visual range. Third generation inducted improved radars, missiles and avionics to ensure that they are less susceptible to be targeted by the enemy aircraft. Fourth generation incorporated fly-by-wire control, multi-role capabilities. Examples are Mirage 2000, MiG-29, Sukhoi 27. Then 4.5 generation aircrafts use more advanced avionics, electronics with some stealth capabilities. For example, Su-30 MKI that India have. The 5th generation aircrafts are multi-role or swing role but also incorporate advanced stealth technology, composite materials, super cruise, as well as that they can achieve the supersonic speeds. And this was one of the question in prelims 2024, that how many of above are considered 5th generation aircraft. None of them are 5th generation aircraft. None was the correct answer here. Next topic is new farming technology that holds potential to stop desertification, and this is related to your GS paper 3 agriculture, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 4. So an innovative experiment to grow wheat for the first time in the arid land using the desert soilification technology powered by an indigenous bioformulation holds the potential to stop the expansion of western Rajasthan's Thar desert towards the national capital region, and this desertification process has speeded up with the gradual destruction of Aravalli ranges. Now, what exactly is happening? The researchers have essentially carried out modification of desert sand into soil using polymers for reaping its full agricultural potential. Thus, the soil, that is the sandy soil that was there, the polymers were used in this, and that provided better water retention capabilities to this soil, and that is the reason it was possible to grow wheat in these areas. After the laboratory experiment with 3 bioformulations, the bioformulations are actually the polymers that are used on this soil, and three crops, bajra, guar gum and chickpea, the scientific exploration has been shifted to an agricultural field for growing wheat. The groundbreaking achievement was made with 13 kg seeds of wheat of indigenous variety which were grown at 1000 square meter. Also, the wheat required only 3 irrigation, which demonstrated the technology's high water retention efficacy. And the bioformulation developed by the team had enhanced the water retention in the soil, promoted cross-linking of sand particle to improve soil structure, and stimulated the beneficial microbial activity that boosted the crop's stress resistance. Also, the crop harvested in April 2025 yielding 26 kg of wheat per 100 square meter. That means the yield is also better. And it has been developed with the support of Krishi Vigyan Kendra and the state government's horticulture department. The experiment is an example of applied science turning into social impact. That the societal impact is that desertification is getting reduced. The people who are employed in the agriculture and who are dependent on the agriculture in these areas, their income will also improve, with the help of which the poverty will be reduced, the educational health indicators might be improved. Also, the research scholar who executed the field implementation said that the reduced input and the healthy crop growth in the hostile environment were important aspects of the work. Also, the number of irrigation cycles were reduced to 4 using the bioformulation, 6 when compared to 5 or 6 that is used for the normal agriculture. And it has much better efficacy of water retention as well as the overall yield. There has been certain other mandate and the responsibilities that are given to Krishi Vikas Kendras. For example, they provide on-farm testing. They are responsible for conducting on-farm testing to identify the location, specificity of agricultural technologies under the various farming systems, frontline demonstrations to establish the production potential of various crops and enterprises on farmers' field, organizing training and capacity building, that it provides needs-based training for farmers to update their knowledge and skills in modern agricultural technologies related to technology assessment, refinement, and demonstration and training of extension personnel to orient them in frontier areas of the technology. Now, certain other information regarding the wheat. It is a rabi crop. It required cool growing season as well as bright sunshine during the ripening period is required. Also, it required temperature around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Rainfall, it required medium rainfall from 50 to 75 centimeter. It required well drained loam and claying soil. Moderate water retention capabilities of the soil is useful for the wheat crop, and it is suitable for dry areas with some irrigation facilities. It is second most important cereal crop in India. India is second largest producer globally, but we have less than 1% share in global wheat trade because majority of them is getting consumed in the domestic market. Top producing states as per Economic Survey 24-25 is Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and then Punjab. Next topic is North Atlantic Trade Organization, that is NATO. This is related to your GS paper 2, bilateral groupings and agreements, important international institutions. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 10. So India on Friday described factually incorrect and entirely baseless the remarks that was made by the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. And India said that we expect the leadership of an important institution like NATO to exercise greater responsibility and accuracy in public statements. And India's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs said that India was committed to ensure predictable and affordable energy costs to the Indian consumers, and that India will take all the necessary measures to safeguard national interest as well as the economic security. Also, the External Affairs Minister and the US Secretary of State met on the sidelines of United Nations General Assembly on September 20 to 25. They were also joined by Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal as well as US Trade Representative, as officials of both sides are also trying to finalize the trade deals between India and US. Now, what exactly is the NATO? NATO came in 1949 after the Washington Treaty was signed, and it is a security alliance of 30 countries from North America and Europe. It provides system of collective defense where independent member states agree for mutual defense in case of any attack by external party. For example, the Panchayat web series, which is a very famous web series available on the Amazon Prime. Whenever there was an attack on any one person, whole village was united. Whenever there was an attack on Sachivji, the Prahlad Chacha or the Pradhanji or the clerk in the panchayat office, they all went to fight with the person who said something to the Sachivji. Or whenever the MLA was attacking the village, it was the whole village which was united. That also shows the system of collective defense, where any attack on any independent member will be attack on all the members. And Article 5 of Washington Treaty, an attack against one ally is an attack against all. Headquarters of NATO is in Brussels, Belgium. It provides functions like political functions or promotes democratic values, builds trust, and in the long run it also prevents the conflict. And the military functions are that it is committed to peaceful resolution of disputes. If diplomatic efforts fail, it has the military powers to undertake crisis management operations. This is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.